All right, thank you for being here. Thank you for clicking on the video. I'm just going to get right into the topic. Clicked here because you want to find out the 3 ways to improve your life in 2021. I know we're already in February, but it's still early in the year. I know a lot of the 2021 stuff starts coming out in December and January, but it's really just 3 ways to improve your life, period. Doesn't have to be in 2021. Doesn't matter when you're starting, you just start. Never a bad time to start improving. These are the 3 topics, the 3 ways that we're going to be talking about, and then we'll go into depth. Stop looking outside yourself for problems to solve. That's 1. We'll get into it. Stop looking outside yourself for approval, love, and validation. That's 2. We're going to get into that. 3rd one, stop looking outside yourself for God. You definitely want to stick around for that one because there's a lot to know about that one. So those are the 3 right there. We can get into it. I'm going to explain each one by one. Let's start with number 1, stop looking outside yourself for problems to solve. All right. There's a really good quote by Johann Wolfgang von, I don't know how to pronounce that, Goethe. The quote is, "Let everyone sweep in front of his own door and the whole world will be clean." Pretty self-explanatory, but it basically translates to deal with your own problems before you go getting involved in somebody else's stuff. If everybody was focused on themselves, then everybody would be okay. Jordan Peterson has a book out called The 12 Rules for Life. Really good book. I'm going to link it in the description below in case you want to check it out. If you're into Jordan Peterson at all, I'm pretty sure you know about the book. You probably already read it. The rule I'm talking about here is rule number 6, where he says, put your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. And at face value, it seems like he's saying make sure that everything is perfect in your life before you start concerning yourself with anybody else's life. Not necessarily the case. He does go on to explain it, and this was in an interview. I'm not sure he says it like this in the book. He does break it down pretty good, but in the interview, he goes on to say, that doesn't mean you shouldn't take any action to help others until you have your own life completely in order. But don't try to engage in the large-scale transformation of other people and use that as your distraction from focusing on improving yourself. All right, so what people can do is they have plenty of things that they could be dealing with within themselves. They have plenty of ways they could be improving their own life, but instead of doing that, and kind of as a form of avoidance, they start trying to help somebody else out for the virtue of it, or to be noble, or to be seen a certain way. You can use somebody else's problems to distract you from your own, or you can use somebody else's problems to excuse you as to why you can't do certain things. Like you can't take care of yourself because of something else, which is going to lead us into the whole victim mentality situation. So you can see victim mentality kind of tied up, being pulled by a rope. Basically, your happiness and your well-being is attached to whatever somebody else is doing, or it's attached to what's going on in your life. It's attached to circumstances, right? To define a victim mentality, not necessarily to define it, but a statement on the subject is that people that have a victim mentality believe that life happens to them rather than for them. As a result, they're quick to feel victimized when something doesn't go as planned. At its core, a victim mentality is a form of avoidance. That's what I was saying earlier. When you have a victim mentality, you take the responsibility off yourself. This is not my fault. I can't do this because such and such. And I'm going to get into that too. So for our first example, waiting for conditions to change before you'll be willing to change yourself. You don't want to change, so you make up an excuse to why you can't. Example quote, I can't do blank because blank. So I can't get a certain job, or I can't go to a certain school, or I can't lose weight. I can't do this certain good thing for myself because this thing is blocking me, or this person is blocking me. It's outside of my control why I can't help myself. It's a victim mentality. You want to get rid of that because it's a weakness. It's not going to help you out. Another one is waiting for someone else to make you happy rather than finding your own happiness. Example quote of that is, I'm always upset because you blank. I'm always upset because of how you talk to me or how you treat me. Like all of these things make me upset. Letting someone make you feel any type of way but upset, or I can't be happy because of what you're doing here, gives them control over your happiness in a way that it's a weakness. If it's up to them whether or not you're happy, it's a weakness for you. You want to be able to be happy whether they're acting in a way that you like or not. You know what I mean? It's up to you whether you want to be happy. And this stuff sounds cliche, but when you really get a hold of and you get to let that sink in, it's really powerful stuff. If you can be happy regardless of what anybody else is doing, it makes you a powerful person, which we'll eventually get to that quote later on. Other examples is for someone to make you feel loved. So you have to love yourself to a certain point where it doesn't matter if somebody outside you loves you the way that you think they should or not. And it's like the whole secret to that is when you do love yourself, then everybody ends up loving you, or either you don't need it from them in a way that allows them to bring it to you. And it's just so hard for me to articulate how good I want to say that. But when you love yourself, and I don't mean for it to sound so cliche, like the love yourself type of quotes, but somebody else can't make you feel loved if you don't love yourself. Simply said, right? Same thing with feeling important, same thing with feeling smart. When these feelings and emotions come from within, you are powerful. And that's what I was saying earlier. If it's not up to somebody else to make you feel a certain way, if you can decide that you feel good, you could decide that you're happy, you could decide that you're smart and important and beautiful and all those things. It doesn't have anything to do with anybody else or what anybody else says. That's what makes you powerful. All right, and this victim mentality is closely linked to another subject that's pretty prominent these days, and that's going to be social justice. And just looking that up on Google, the definition for social justice, generally, justice in terms of distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges within a society. Certain ideas of social justice, certain quotes that you hear about it, is that 1% of the world's population controls more money than the 99% combined. I've heard that said about just America, and I've heard that said about the world. And I'm not, an economy expert, so I can't say which is which or what's accurate or not, but just generally stated, the social justice fighters talk about how the wealth is kept at the top, the 1%, the richest of the rich. They control so much money that if you combine the other 99%, all of the regular job having people, if you combine all of their salaries together, the amount that adds up to, the rich people still have and control more money than that. Another thing is that they are privileged, right? They get opportunities that we don't have access to. So here's that's how victim mentality and social justice kind of link together, is that this is not fair. They get everything, we get nothing, and they need to spread it to us, which the next one, they should spread their wealth to the rest of us. There's a book called Egalitarian Envy, Gonzalo Fernandez de la Mora. It's a long name, but I like how he describes social justice in this book, and I'm going to link the book in the description too. He describes social justice as a contemporary disguise of collective envy. I like that definition of it because it really does explain what's really going on. There's a cover of, oh, well, we want fairness and we just want what's right for everybody, and I think people really do believe in what they're fighting for, which is the equality and stuff like that, but not so much. I mean, there's the whole debate about whether are you fighting for equality of outcome or equality of opportunity. And some people will say literally both of those. I want the opportunities and the outcomes and everything spread evenly. But the bottom line of it is that they see, I see what you have, looking at the wealthy and the rich. I see what you have, I want what you have, and I'm mad that I don't have it. And it's not fair. Like I said, again, victim mentality and the social justice situation going on, very closely linked. So here's something to think about. Even if everyone in the world were made equal in terms of wealth or just material things altogether, people would still find other things to be envious about. If everybody had enough money, and if everybody had a nice house, and if everybody had a nice car or two or three, all of these material things, there's just always something to compare, right? And then at that point, where does it end? Where would it end? Because then it comes down to you have physical characteristics. Some people are prettier. Some people are better looking. Some people are more athletic. Some people are taller. Some people are smarter. There's things about people. There's things that make us different. There's things we can't help. So like people are just born with certain things. What if I have these dark brown eyes that look black, and I've never had an opinion about my eyes before. I just said that right now, but I'm good with them. I don't see somebody, but that's the thing. Somebody else can be born with blue eyes or green eyes, or just more interesting. I think my eyes are cool. They're kind of regular. They're kind of normal, right? What if I just looked at somebody with blue eyes and was just mad that they were born with their blue eyes? This is like, that's the thing. Where would it, because and it sounds ridiculous, but that's a real thing. People would always find something to compare. People will always find something to complain about. People will always find something to be envious about. There's a really good quote by Arthur Schopenhauer about the physical characteristics, being envious of that kind of thing, right? He says, envy directed against personal qualities is the most insatiable and poisonous, because the envious is left without hope. It is also the lowest type of envy, for it hates what it ought to love and respect. So good. And just like breaking down the first part of that, the envious is left without hope, meaning that there's some stuff you can't do in it, like the eyes thing I was talking about. Because I have these dark eyes, which I swear to you, I like my eyes. It was just an example. But if I hate somebody, or I'm envious of them for having color like blue or green, or hate like some other more interesting color, I guess I would say, that's not my real opinion on it. But by the comparison, if I felt like I want those kinds of eyes, they're like, I'm left with no hope. I can't dig my eyes out and change them. I know there's contacts and stuff like that, and people do that, and I'm not gonna say nothing. But my real eyes, I can't change. I can't change the fact that they were born with the eyes they have, and I can't change the fact that I was born with the eyes. That's hopeless. It's a hopeless thing to be envious about, because what the heck are you gonna do? Right? That's the point with that. It's really good. But favorite part of that quote is also the lowest type of envy, for it hates what it ought to love and respect. Why couldn't I just appreciate that about that person? I don't need the blue or green or whatever colored eyes, but I could be like, wow, that's lucky, good for you with your freaking blue eyes or your green eyes or whatever. You can appreciate that stuff about people. You can, and it's not so much about the eyes, it's other things like the athletic I was talking about, or somebody who takes good care of themselves. They could run faster, they could jump higher. You can love and respect that about them, that they took care of themselves to the point where they're able to do that kind of stuff. Instead, a lot of people won't get themselves in that condition, and then they hate the people that do. It doesn't have to be physical. It could be like just across the board, financially, or just life in general, family life, whatever. You see somebody doing better, and instead of being inspired, figuring out how you can make your life similar, you don't have to make your life like theirs, but they're doing pretty good, they're well off financially. How can I get myself in a situation like that? It's the things that should inspire us. A lot of people allow themselves to be envious of things like that. You should not envy what you ought to love and respect. It's a really good quote. Another one is by Kierkegaard. I'm pretty sure I said that right. He says simply, envy is concealed admiration. That's a good quote, but one person said it better. One person said it a little bit better, and it was in a rap. And I bet you some of you are already thinking of it, but the late, great Drake. He says, jealousy is just love and hate at the same time. I mean, it really is good. Jealousy is just love and hate at the same time is a really good description of jealousy. You're hating on somebody because you want what they have, and you're just mad that they don't have it. So we're going to talk about fighting monsters, which is really good. We're talking about beware of fighting monsters. So this is by Friedrich Nietzsche. Has a super good quote about this. Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. Meaning, do not become what you're fighting. And with the quote monsters, and that could like feel so impersonal. It's like monsters, whatever. Fighting monsters, don't become a monster. Fighting a monster sounds like whatever. So instead of monster, let's just take the word monster out, because there's a lot of stuff going on. that people are fighting certain things, but they're becoming the thing that they're fighting about. For example, whoever fights racism should see to it that in the process, it does not become a racist. Just let that simmer for like 2 seconds. Because we all know there's some stuff going on right now related to this that I'm not going to get too deep into. I want to, but I don't want to. And there's a thing about a pendulum swing, and I'll just bring up the next one too. You take the word racism out, you put sexism in there. It's a lot of isms you could put in that spot. You're fighting against this, but you become that very thing. But the thing is, I heard a really good example, and I don't know where I heard it first and who said it and what, and I wish I could find it, but it's like a pendulum swing where maybe there was a time where things were not equal or things were not as fair as they could be, and so people had to not really fight, because I don't agree with fighting, but there was some equality could be corrected, right? So fighting for equality, eventually that pendulum swings, and you can't see my hand, and I don't know how far the camera goes out, but the pendulum swings, and then somewhere down here, it meets equality. The momentum goes though, that's the thing, and somewhere it meets the equality, and then it just goes too far and goes completely the opposite side. Yeah, there were some things that it's better that they're corrected now, but then it starts going too far, and it's like, it seems like people want the fight, right? It's not, you didn't really want the solution, you wanted the fight, because when you got the solution, you started going way too far with it, and it just went completely the other direction where you just start hating the thing. Like, you were fighting for equality, and then at some point when you got equality, you kept fighting, so now that you're better or dominant, or you get the point. Don't become the thing that you're fighting though. So the rest of that quote, whoever fights monsters should see to it that he in the process does not become a monster. The rest of it is, if you gaze long enough into the abyss, an abyss will gaze back into you, which is a very good way of saying that whatever you focus on, you become. What you think about, you become. And it seems like if you're fighting against something, you're not necessarily thinking about that or focused on that thing in a way that you become it, but you can't stop that from happening. Whatever you focus on grows, or whatever you focus on, you bring it into your life. And if you're focusing on racism, how could you not become a racist? If you're focusing on any other isms, all of these fights for equality, seems like at some point the equality happens, but the fight doesn't stop. You have to think about why that is. And the thing about that is that once you get the equality that you're looking for, then it's kind of like you don't have a problem, but you want to keep fighting. So then do you kind of start creating a problem at that point? Because I think that's what happens. If we don't have real problems to solve, then we start creating problems to overcome something, because there's just something about our nature that wants to overcome. If every individual first believed that they have the power to improve their own lives and would focus on doing so, then the world wouldn't need so much, quote, saving. There wouldn't be so much need to go out there and help somebody else if everybody would just focus on improving themselves. We've knocked out number 1, we're going to move up to number 2, which is to stop looking outside yourself for approval, love, and validation. And we're going to go back into the victim mentality quotes, right? So where we were talking about waiting for conditions to change before you'll be willing to change yourself. Before, that was a victim mentality, and we had the quote about, I can't do such and such because. So if you're not looking outside yourself for approval, if you're self-approved, the self-approved version of this would be, I can study, I can get a degree, I can develop skills, I can make myself so valuable that someone's going to want to, someone's going to want to work with me, but somebody's going to want me on their team, right? So instead of feeling like you have to be accepted by somebody, you're going to make yourself so exceptional. You're going to make yourself so valuable that you're going to be chosen, right? Like somebody's going to want, like you're going to attract the person or the team or the job or whatever you're looking for. You don't have to go looking for it. You make yourself into the person that they want, so that really they're looking for you rather than you looking for them to approve of you, if that makes sense. You do that by focusing on yourself. You improve yourself to the point where they can't help but want to work with you or to be with you or to whatever with you, have you somehow in their lives. It benefits them because you have made yourself so valuable, right? Another victim mentality statement we talked about, waiting for someone else to make you happy rather than finding your own happiness. The weakness is handing that over to them. I can't be happy because you're doing this and this, or I'm always upset because you blank. That was the example we used. Self-approved version of that is, I don't know what their problem is, but it's not my problem. A lot of people, that's so hard for them to accept, that somebody else's problems, it's not up to you to solve their problems, right? It's not up to you to jump in and be the hero to make them happy, just like it's not up to them to jump in and make you happy. I don't know what their problem is, but it's not my problem. I'm good. And it sounds selfish, but it's just not. It's the best way for people to help each other out, is to be concerned with their own, right? It's not my job to fix whatever's going on with them. Maybe my good mood will lift them up, but I don't have to let their bad mood bring me down. Another victim mentality statement, waiting for someone else to make you feel secure. And that's blaming somebody, like, I feel insecure because of what so-and-so did to me a long time ago, last year, whatever. This person, I got cheated on, and now I don't trust anybody. I feel insecure. That's a huge weakness. You don't want to leave your security up to somebody else either. So the self-approved version of that, I've been done wrong in the past. People stolen from me. They've lied to me, lied on me, cheated. And this is an example. I'm not saying this like for real, for me, but stuff happens, right? People have mistreated me, but that's all in the past. People have also, this is where you start looking at more the positive side of things. People have also been honest with me and treated me very well. There are good people in my life. I'm stronger now, I'm better now. And no matter what anyone else does, I'm gonna be okay. That's security within yourself that doesn't depend on anybody else, right? You're talking to yourself in a way that you know you're secure no matter what's going on around you. Again, when these feelings and emotions come from within, you're a powerful person. That means that you're not depending on anybody else to make you feel a certain way. Doesn't matter what somebody else does, doesn't matter what somebody else says. And speaking of what somebody else says, we have this guy right here, Wayne Dyer. He had a really good quote about how you feel about what people think of you or say about you. His quote is, "What other people think of me is none of my business. One of the highest places you can get to is being independent of the good opinions of other people." And even like just the first part of that, what other people think of me is none of my business, period. That's good right there. What other people think of you, that's on them. Their opinion of you is on them. It's not on you, and it's not on you to fix their opinion of you. My favorite part of the quote though, one of the highest places you can get to is being independent of the good opinions of other people. So not naturally, it's more popular now to understand that if somebody, the bad opinions of people, don't let that affect you, or dust off the haters. Like all of that stuff is really popular now. Don't let the hate get you down. Don't let the bad opinions that people have of you, don't let that stuff get you down. But then there's still attachment to good opinions of people. A lot of people do things for the pat on the back, or for the applause, or for the good job, or the attaboy, or whatever you want to call it. It's like, I won't let bad opinions affect me, but I still want those good opinions about me. I still need to know that I'm appreciated or whatever. So a lot of things that people do have to do with getting those good opinions out of people. And the thing about this is saying that don't be dependent on that either. So if somebody's saying something bad about you, and it's not that, if somebody's saying something good about you, that is a good thing, right? So it's not like you don't want them to say good things about you either. But the thing is, you don't want to count on that. You don't want to depend on that in order to be happy. So as long as people are saying good things about me, then I can feel okay. But if they're saying bad things, then I can't. Or if they're saying bad things about me, then I can dust that off. But I still need them to say good things, whatever. If they're saying bad things or if they're saying good things, you're independent either way. You're good to go no matter what anybody's saying about you. So this part of the quote is just powerful in a way that even if the good opinions of people don't make you feel some type of way, if you're independent of that, that's really good on you, because then at that point, automatically it's more likely that the bad opinions won't affect you either. Another super good quote, that I found dealing with loving yourself and approving of yourself, and it's kind of contained all of it all in one quote. And this is, I think I'm saying it right, Lao Tzu. And I try to look into whether this is a real person or not. If somebody can answer this, a Chinese philosopher, to like, I don't know if this person really lived or this person was, I don't know, like created or teacher. I don't know. But the quote is super good. And the quote says this: because one believes in oneself, one doesn't try to convince others. Because one is content with oneself, one doesn't need others' approval. Because one accepts oneself, the whole world accepts them. And the actual quote says him, but of course, you know, them is appropriate as well. Super good quote, but oneself, one believes in oneself just seems a little bit impersonal. And I thought like that's really could be a really good affirmation for somebody to say like to themselves. I reworded it. It's not my quote still, it's still their quote, but you know, something you could look at yourself in the mirror and say, because I believe in myself, I don't try to convince others. Because I am content with myself, I don't need others' approval. And because I accept myself, the whole world accepts me. And don't focus too much on the whole world accepts me, because I get it. Like that's really good for the meaning of it. If I accept myself, it doesn't matter what the rest of the world thinks, is more how I would phrase it. But if I accept myself, the whole world accepts me. They have no choice, because there's power in accepting yourself. You ever notice people who seem needy don't seem to get what they need, or see people who want attention don't get attention? It's the people who don't care. Somehow the people who don't really care are the people who are the most admired. People seeking admiration don't get much of it, but the people who could care less, it just seems like it comes automatically. And that's the same thing with self-acceptance, or because I accept myself, the whole world accepts me, meaning that I don't need you to accept me, which means it is probably automatically going to come from everywhere. Acceptance, same thing with love and everything else, and the first parts of the believing, content, all of that stuff is supposed to come from within you. And when it comes from within you, then it's reflected from the outside. People treat you how you feel about yourself. So the thing about all of this is nobody outside of you, no one outside of you can sustain your well-being. Nobody has enough strength and patience and everything else it takes to make sure that you're always happy, that you're always content, that you're always secure. Nobody can pull that off. They can try to, and there's a teacher that's coming up, Abraham Hicks, who says you can't stand on your head in enough different ways to make somebody happy all the time. Nobody has the energy to do that. That's why it needs to come from you. If you count on somebody else to make you feel a certain way all the time, it's gonna wear them out. They're gonna disappoint you. People are just not good at holding up other people all the time. If your emotions are attached to what somebody else is doing, you're already in trouble. So you want to get that under control. No one outside of you can sustain your well-being. That's your job to do. Or if you don't feel like it's your job, that's between you and God. God can sustain your well-being. So, how to sustain your own well-being? Learn how to use your emotions. Abraham Hicks talks about using your emotions in the best way, because it's related to what kind of thoughts you're thinking, and you can't monitor your thoughts all day long. Sometimes it seems like your thoughts happen to you, and there's so many of them, it's just hard to track them. What your emotions can do for you is let you know what or how you're thinking, what you've been thinking about. And we have so many titles for so many different emotions, but Abraham Hicks breaks it down to negative emotion and positive emotion. So imagine you get lost in a train of thought, you just take off with that train of thought, and all of a sudden, 5 minutes in, you just feel this burning in your chest, you don't feel so good. That lets you know what you were thinking of. It doesn't let you can backtrack and figure out what you were thinking in particular, but lets you know that you were thinking of some negative thoughts. Same thing with positive, like you just in this really upbeat mood, or you just got lost in a train of thought and you're feeling great, you were thinking some really positive thoughts. So your emotions let you know whether you're thinking negative or positive, and it's more instant too. It doesn't have to be a train of thought thing. That's more for like you can't track all of your thoughts. But even if you're judging, so like you're looking at somebody and judging them, you don't feel great inside. There's a disconnection to that. You don't feel good while you're doing that, or you're talking, gossiping, or doing, I don't know. So the gossip one gets me, because some people really enjoy gossiping, so I got to look more into that. But When you say like how you talk to yourself, if you feel like you can't, that doesn't feel good. Your emotions let you know that's not a good thought. Doesn't agree with God or the source within you. If you feel like you can, or you feel like you're able and you feel uplifted, you see what I get? Positive and negative emotions. Really good indicators to how you're thinking. Next is learn how to put things into perspective. Sometimes you feel like things are really bad when they're not so bad, or you feel like the same thing, you feel like you can't do something, it's gonna be too hard. You know, like putting things into perspective can save you a lot of discord. Be your own best friend. And I could just combine that with be your own biggest supporter too. As far as talking or sharing ideas with somebody who just doesn't agree that you should go that route. Could be family and it could be friends, or it could be your best friend. There's plenty of stories out there where somebody came up with like a business idea and they talked to their best friend about it, and the friend wasn't supportive. It's like, man, don't just stick to what you're doing. Don't quit your day job. Don't quit your day job. Be your own biggest supporter, meaning it doesn't matter what anybody else says. You feel like you can do what you need to do because you are your own biggest supporter. Also, be your own biggest advocate. Being your own biggest advocate is like, you can make mistakes. We all will make mistakes, but some people can hold those mistakes against you somewhat unfairly. But be your own biggest advocate in a way that it doesn't take them letting you off the hook for you to feel better. You make mistakes, you learn from your mistakes, and you move on, you grow, all that stuff, you're better. You know what I mean? Be your own biggest advocate. And the biggest one, develop internal security. Don't let somebody else be your source of security. All of that should come from within you, right? There's an author named Eckhart Tolle, or Eckhart Tolle, I don't know if I'm saying that right either. He has a super good quote that kind of sums up all of this stuff too, where he says, stop looking outside for scraps of pleasure or fulfillment, for validation, security, or love. You have a treasure within you that is infinitely greater than anything the world can offer. So good. So I'm going to just end this with this quote right here. If you live your whole life seeking the approval of others, then you didn't really live your own life. If you and people, it goes both ways. People will not do things they want to do based on whether other people will approve or not. And then they'll do things they don't want to do at all based on whether people approve of them or not. If all of your decisions are based on, or even most, or even some, I don't know, like whatever level of it, when you're living based on like, I need these people to approve of me, so all of your decisions have that, or going through that filter, you're not really living your own life if it's all based on what somebody else thinks. And now we're going to move on to the third final topic, which is stop looking outside yourself for God. Before I even get too deep into this, I just want to make it clear, I do believe in God. I do believe God is real. I do believe that God lives within, and we'll get into that. But just making sure that we establish right up front, this is not a stop looking outside yourself for God because God doesn't exist kind of thing. A little bit different. But let's get into it. We're going to talk about your individual connection to God, which can be misunderstood depending on what situation, as far as what religion or church or whatever you're going to. The teacher I mentioned earlier, Abraham Hicks, was questioned about Jesus and religion and church and the effects of it and all this. I'm going to link that description below so you can watch the whole thing. Disclaimer here too, because this is pointing out some stuff about how religion kind of affects the individual connection between you and God. But watch the whole thing, because it's not a bash on religion, it's not a bash on church, but it does talk about like the kind of groupthink situation that goes on that affects the individual connection. So this is the quote by Abraham Hicks. We do not believe that there is any religion that exists on the planet today that can guide anyone effectively, because we do not see anyone involved in any religion who's able to tune in to their own guidance, almost without exception. Even though there's a lot of talk about the spiritual world, and there's a lot of talk about having conversations with God, and there's a lot of talk about being tuned into the spirit, and there's a lot of talk about your connection to all of that, we see very little effort made on a personal basis to understand what that means. And then goes on to say connection to source, or you can replace the word source. I call it source, most people call it God. Either way, connection to God is an individual thing. Religion hinders that usually more than it helps it. you can kind of wonder how does religion hinder the individual connection more than it helps it? And for example, we can look at how people view the Bible. You can read it individually, right? Or you can go to a church where, there's the Sunday services or Bible studies, things like that, where you get into a group and you read the Bible and you start getting other people's interpretations of it. It's not bad to share in that way. And most churches, I grant this, most churches tell their members to read the Bible for themselves, read the Bible individually, gain an understanding individually. The thing is, most people don't. Let's just be honest about it. Most people don't do that. You have to be really like searching or on a journey or, serious about it in order to do that. Most, like a large percentage of the people in the congregation just don't read it for themselves. The thing about it is the individual connection. People think that the Bible contains all of it. They'll say that God speaks, but they don't really speak to God. Here's a couple of questions to ask yourself as far as the Bible goes. Did God stop speaking once the Bible was complete? My answer to that is no, not at all. Is God alive and communicating today? My answer to that is yes. And if everything God had to say was contained in the Bible, would he still be communicating with us today? The reason I ask it that way is because when somebody says all they have to say, then there's really nothing left to say, right? So that the fact that he's still alive, or God, or source, whatever you call it, is still communicating actively now means that the whole groupthink of religion and church, it shouldn't hinder your individual connection, your individual relationship with God. So continuing from the last part of the last quote, connection to source or God is an individual thing. Religion hinders that usually more than it helps it, because most religions are more interested in what you can do for them as a body than they are helping you find your individual connection and becoming independently empowered. Okay, there's the YouTube video. It's called Church and Religion. I'm going to link it in the bottom though, so you can watch the whole thing, because it's actually really good and there's no bashing going on there. It's a really good explanation of what goes on with individual relationship versus being involved in a religion. I grew up in church, and I'm not talking about any particular church because I think it's but most churches, I think, this is just my opinion and I could be wrong, so let me say that, but most churches, I felt like they do have a growth mentality to them, which is not a bad thing at all. You want your church to grow, you want more and more people to come, more and more people to experience God, and so all of that is good. They're really good things. But there is a certain group mentality that takes over the individual. So you become part of teams and you become part of something bigger, where now it's not as important for you to individually. And like I said, most churches do tell you individually, strengthen yourself, grow, read the Bible and all this stuff. It's the individual people have to really hold themselves accountable to that. So it's not a blame on the church or on the religion, but it really is important to understand that being involved, it is a good thing, but there's the other side to it that takes away your individuality. And well, let me just get to the next thing real quick. Strength in numbers. Religion tends to give you a sense of strength in numbers. And there's a scripture that I always heard all my life growing up in church, for where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them. It's not a bad scripture, and it's not an untrue thing either. And that would always be followed up with, we're in this stadium, look at, there's 100 of us in here, there's 1,000 or there's 10,000, whatever. There's this mentality of strength in numbers that make you feel like God shows up for a crowd of people. By comparison, like if it was just one person, does God show up for that? Thing is, there is strength in numbers, so that we're not trying to take away from that. It's just that you don't want that to take over your individual and your personal connection. Your personal connection is just as strong. That's the thing that's most important to understand. Your individual connection to God is just as strong as any group or any powerful. Even the Abraham Hicks, who just passed, said that one person connected to God is stronger than millions who are not. That's what's really strong, a really powerful statement. But here's the thing to understand, and here's the controversial statement of the whole video. You are God, and that doesn't mean you are the Most High, or you are what religions and churches depict God to be. It doesn't mean you are the ruler of the universe. You're the ruler of your universe, I'll say that. But there are statements that Jesus made in the Bible that make it clear that God lives within. A lot of people will say this and admit that, but then it's like, for some reason there's still a cross, like it's not grasped onto. But anyway, Jesus said things like, I and my Father are one. When he said that, and he said it, I think, to the Jews, right? And they started grabbing stones, getting ready to stone him. And when he asked them why, they said, it's because you're literally saying that you're God. That's where he responded with, is it not written in your law that ye are gods? Or in other translations, I said you are gods. You're getting ready to stone me for saying that I am what I'm saying you are too. You are all gods. Are we all extensions of God? I think yes, we are. Does Jesus call us his brothers and sisters? So in connection, if I and my Father are one, if Jesus and his Father are one, and we're his brothers and sisters, and also I and my Father are one, but Jesus said our Father. If his Father is our Father, you know what I mean? Like, make the connection here. If Jesus and his Father were one, then that means I and my Father are one. You and your Father are one. However you want to look at it. You are God means that God put a portion of himself in all of us to experience life from our perspective. You have access to God's power because you are from the source. Better said, a different statement which I had ready is, if you take a cup of water from the ocean, is that water not the same as the source from which it came? Meaning, if you come from God, if you are literally a piece of God, are you not the same as the source from which you came? That's what I mean by you are God. You are that which you came from, and you came from God, so you are. It doesn't mean to put yourself above anything. It just means to take responsibility for what you're capable of. There's a book called So Why Aren't You Rich by Darel, Rutherford. One of my favorite books, and this is my favorite chapter in the book, where he talks about where is God. He talks about how God is within us and is the thing that gives us the ability to solve our own problems. So the problem is, we as people tend to think that someone else, or look for someone we feel is more capable, and that could be someone like a teacher or a pastor or some kind of deity, to solve our problems for us, when that problem was already placed in us when God placed himself in us. He uses a really good example, the story of the Wizard of Oz, with how Dorothy was trying to get back home to, I think, Kansas. She's told that there's a wizard, and how to find the wizard. The Munchkins told her follow the yellow brick road, and that's the whole story. Everybody knows the Wizard of Oz, I think. Along the way, she meets the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, the Lion, right? And they're all looking for the wizard too, because they have stuff they want to find. Scarecrow's looking for a heart, Tin Man's looking for a brain, for wisdom, and the Lion is looking for courage because he's a cowardly lion. Here's the thing about it. Along the way, they go through this, they go through that. They go through stuff where, how earlier I was talking about, hard times builds a strong man. They go through stuff along the way where they end up, and I'll just get to where they find the wizard. They find out that he was a phony, or he sends it back out on a journey. Anyway, they go through stuff that builds them up. That one is looking for the heart. The journey causes them to find the heart they were looking for. They're looking for wisdom. The journey causes them, and all of these things are the things that Dorothy needed to get back home. They're looking for all these things from the wizard, from the deity, from somebody better than them that could just give this to them. But the journey itself gave them everything. The journey gave them heart, the journey gave them wisdom, and the journey gave them courage. And so looking for it from the wizard and getting there and finding out the wizard was a phony anyway and couldn't provide anything, what the wizard did do was let them know they had already found what they were looking for on the journey, right? The journey caused them to grow into the characteristics they hoped that the wizard would grant them. Which means it's not like, that's so perfect. It's a perfect analogy to, okay, prayer is good because it gives you faith, or it gives you, now there's certain things that prayer does. But when your prayer is answered, it's not because it came from somewhere. It came from you. You are the God, you are the power that you answered your own prayer by allowing it, not by begging for it, not by looking for it from outside sources. It's really good stuff. The challenges they encountered along the way caused them to find the heart, the wisdom, and the courage they needed to solve their own problems. So the thing is, we're all on this path, we're all on this journey, and we need to trust the process, meaning allow everything we're going through in our life, allow everything that we deal with, every encounter we face, everything we overcome is the thing that's building us and growing us into the people that we should be, or that the people that we want to be or would desire to be. So let's just recap. Going back to number 1, we're not going to go through the whole thing, just to summarize it. Don't try to save the world. If everyone in the world would focus on improving themselves, then the whole world would improve. And that's like the sweeping around your own front porch situation. Really good statement. Number 2, stop looking outside yourself for approval, love, and validation. And then there was that really good quote that we could just make into an affirmation. Because I believe in myself, I don't try to convince others. Because I am content with myself, I don't need others' approval. And because I accept myself, the whole world accepts me. And number 3, stop looking outside yourself for God. Doesn't mean God's not there, it just means God's within. And since we are extensions of God, we have access to the power of God. We access this power by trusting that we have the ability to solve our own problems. And then as far as all of us being on the journey, on this path, allow life to cause you to grow into the best version of you. So that's the 3 ways you can improve your life in 2021, or that's 3 ways you could just improve your life, period. No matter where you're seeing or when you're seeing this video, you do these 3 things, you're bound to improve. Okay, if there's any topics I talked about or I kind of just skated over, something I mentioned that I didn't go too deep into, let me know in the comment section what I should talk about a little more in depth. There are things I'm automatically going to talk about anyway, but it will help to know what to talk about next. All right, that's going to be it for this time. Until next time, seek for yourself, think for yourself, rediscover your source.